Hi, I'm Amanda, and I should probably be reading, but today I'm talking about spooky children's books. Welcome back to my channel. I've been reading a lot of spooky books with my kids, and I decided to make two quick videos about picture books and board books. These are books that are spooky themed, but not Halloween themed. So none of these books actually mention Halloween. They're not set on or around explicitly Halloween. However, they do feature spooky characters. So they feature monsters or vampires or witches or ghosts. They're not all trying to be spooky in their actions. Some are cute, some are fun, some are both. These are the ones I thought fit best for Halloween fall vibes, and I thought we'd just do a quick rundown of my top 20. The individual rankings of a lot of these could vary day to day, but this is just kind of where I'm at right now in terms of which ones are my favorites, all based on vibes, nothing concrete here, no star rankings, just 20 spooky themed books. So the first book I have to talk to you about is Winifred Witch and Her Very Own Cat. This one is so-so. The main character, Winifred, wants to get a cat. Here's Winifred with her family, and you can tell that Winifred doesn't exactly match her family. She's a lot more bright and colorful, whereas her family is more those spooky tones. And her family tells her that if she wants to get a cat, she needs to be more witchy. She needs to be scaring people. But she explicitly says that she doesn't really want to scare people. She doesn't want to give anyone a fright. And I feel like that could have been focused on more, that like Winifred being herself. The resolution to the story is that there are some thieves who break into Winifred's next door neighbor's house, and she does manage to scare those thieves away, saving her next door neighbor's belongings. And then she gets to get her own cat in the resolution of all of one page. The book makes it seem like Winifred got the cat because she was brave, but that wasn't the issue we were dealing with. She wasn't told she had to be brave to get a cat. We were told she had to be scary. And then we were told she didn't want to be scary. So I feel like this one's just a little bit of a muddled mess. It doesn't quite know what it wants to say. I don't know. It's a little weird. One thing I like about children's books is the vocabulary they offer. So with each of these books, I'm going to give you a list of some of the words that I found in the books that are words your kid might not hear in day-to-day conversation, that books will help increase their exposure to more vocabulary words. Because I think that's a great thing about reading to children, is they get to hear so many more words that they might not have heard otherwise. So I do have a cheat sheet on the back of all the books, so if you see me staring at the books, that's why. Some of the words this book had that your kids might not hear every day are stew, drifted, calico, hemlock, neighborly, and screeched. So those are just some of the cool words that your kids might learn if they read this book. Next we have I Am Not Afraid of Ghosts by Juliet and Charles Snape. It is also okay. It's kind of weird. This book follows a girl named Lizzie who goes into an abandoned house that her friends are like, oh, I dare you to go inside. I think it's haunted. And every time something spooky happens, Lizzie is very calm and like she hears a door slam and she goes, oh, these old houses are so drafty. And she feels something running by her foot and then she looks and goes, oh, it's a mouse. And she hears something upstairs and oh, it's a bird. I should let it go. And so Lizzie is very calm and doesn't jump to conclusions. The thing that's weird about it is, I don't know if you can see on the cover, but there is explicitly a ghost in this house. So like when she sees the mouse, there is a ghost who was there, who tickled her foot. So it's kind of strange in that Lizzie is like, oh, it's all these things, but it really was a ghost. At the end, one of her friends says like, oh, did you see any ghost? Are there ghosts in there? And she goes, maybe, but I'm not frightened of ghosts. So it's a little strange. One of the cool things, if your kids like creepy things, is a lot of this art is very creepy. For example, on this page, you can see there's a skull hidden in this bush. And on these ones, there are faces in these trees. So if your kids kind of like looking for spooky things in art, The art here is very detailed. It has some pretty interesting things hidden in the different pictures. So if your kids like spooky things, they might enjoy looking for some of the spooky things in the pictures. But for me, it was just kind of weird. It has kind of a muddled message. I guess Lizzie was brave. That's good. But there was a ghost there. So should Lizzie have noticed there was a ghost? I don't know. It's strange. It was cute. Some of the words for this book that your kids might not come across every day are deserted, musty, drafty, rustled, corridor, and furious. Number 18 in this top 20 is There's a Ghost in This House. This is a slightly interactive book. Its gimmick is that it has these vellum pages. So you'll have a page here, and then you'll have this vellum page in between that when you look at it here, you can't see anything, but when you turn it, it adds a ghost to the image. And so different, let me find a good one. So different images will have different ghosts that you can't see until you turn this vellum page. It's an okay gimmick. My daughter likes trying to figure out where the ghost is going to be and then turning the page and seeing if the ghost ended up where she thought in the image. The vellums mostly line up. There's one at the very end that for me does not line up with the background picture as well as it should. But it's cute. We have a lot of books by Oliver Jeffers and I like his work quite a bit, so this was a pretty safe one to pick up. Not my favorite, but the gimmick is cute and it's a fun little book to read around Halloween. This book does not have many words. It's very sparse on the text, but it did have the words chimney and wardrobe that your kids might not hear every day. Number 17 in this quick top 20 is Sweet Dreams Cthulhu. This is not the last time you will see a Cthulhu book on this list, so look forward to that. This is a sweet little story about being scared and how everyone gets scared sometimes, how nightmares and shadows we see in the dark maybe aren't as scary as we think they are. It's a very sweet book. It's very cute that even Cthulhu, this giant monster, is scared. I'm a little iffy on the use of Howard Lovecraft in this book. Lovecraft is used as this like wise, almost Mr. Rogers like figure who's there to reassure Cthulhu that the scary things aren't really that scary and everyone gets scared, even me. Lovecraft has a lot of issues that the cosmic horror community has kind of grappled with, and I like that the cosmic horror has come a long way since Lovecraft. He is the father of the genre. It makes sense to have him represented here. It just is kind of iffy for me. It's fine for the age range. When my daughter gets older, we'll have a talk about how authors who create things we like aren't always people who we would want to associate with and the complications around that. But yeah, it's a sweet story about being scared and of bad dreams and things in the dark. My kids really like this one. They enjoy the Cthulhus. If you want your kids to know who Cthulhu is, it's worth picking up. I didn't write down any words that this book uses that you might not encounter every day. This book has very simple language, so it still has good vocabulary for your kids to hear, just not anything that they might not encounter elsewhere. Coming in at number 16, we have There's a Witch in Your Book. This is another book in a series that we have a lot of. You can see here there's a Who's in Your Book series. We've been reading these for almost since they started coming out. There's a monster in your book. There's an alien in your book. There's a dragon in your book. My kids love these. These are interactive books that tell you to do things like flap the book like wings or swish the stuff through the hole or spin the book around. They're all a little different. This one focuses on a witch. It doesn't rhyme, but it does have moments where you are casting spells with your finger that do rhyme and are cute, and my kids have most of them memorized. It's fun that you get to like pop bubbles and different things. The one thing I don't like about the book is at one point you turn the witch into a cat. And For some reason, the book decides to call her a stinky little cat. And that just feels like name calling to me. When we read it, we usually change it to silly little cat, except that now my daughter can read, so now she knows we're saying it wrong. So that might have to change. I don't know, but I don't like calling her a stinky little cat. That's just a weird choice. It's not deal breaking. It's just something that I think is kind of like, in a children's book. I don't know. Probably wouldn't bother most people. Some of the words you might encounter in this book would be cheeky, unmuddling, flea, and tidy. At number 15, we have a somewhat nostalgic book for me, which is Never Touch a Monster. This was, for a very long time, one of my daughter's favorite books when she was a tiny toddler. This is an interactive book. On each page, there is a thing to touch and feel, a different part of the monster. And as you can see, our copy is very well loved. This book is also part of a series of a lot of books in this line, this Never Touch a line, that are hit and miss. These early ones were pretty bad about having touching elements on the covers that extended way outward. They've gotten a lot better in recent ones where they recess into the cover a bit more so you can still do a touchy feel, but they're much easier to put on your shelf without getting messed up. This one just got pulled on and off the shelf enough times by rough children that it's a little worse for wear. This book features monsters, but they're not scary at all. They're silly and funny. I love these books for toddlers and babies that maybe are having a hard time sitting still during reading time. This gives them something to do on every page, something to interact with, something to be involved in the story, and my kids have loved this whole series of books. So this one probably would have been a lot higher if my kids were still very, very little, but it's just kind of part of my family's lore, so it still had to be on the list, but it's not as high just because we have so many Never Touch a books and we don't read it as much as we used to. However, I do like that these books have, some of the words are in this loopy script font, which I am going to make sure my daughter tries to read, so she is used to seeing script, cursive like script, so she can get used to writing like that. And she needs to learn how to read cursive so that she can read all the things in history that are written in cursive. This book features fun rhymes, it's interactive, it's great for toddlers and babies. Highly recommend this series, and this one especially for spooky Halloween times. For book 14, we have a classic, which is The Very Busy Spider by Eric Carle. This one is not spooky in terms of the content at all. This spider is not spooky, but spiders are usually associated with Halloween, so I thought it would be a good one to include on the list. This is another book that is interactive. Throughout the book, the spider spins a web, and the spider web is raised so that you can touch it all the way until the web is finished. So you kind of get a sense of feeling that web. It's a very nice feel. This book also is good for animal sounds. The spider is approached by various farmyard animals who say their various sounds. Neigh neigh says the horse, quack quack says the duck. So it's good practice for that if you're reading with your young kids. And the repetition is very good. It makes it for a fun read aloud where your kids are going to know, no, the spider's very busy. She's still spinning her web. Although the text is pretty limited in this one, it does feature some interesting words that your kids might not have heard, such as silky, spin, meadow, and pest. I cheated a little with number 13 and put two books together. This is Goodnight Goon and Going on a Goon Hunt. These are parody books of the classic Goodnight Moon and Going on a Bear Hunt. And my kids love these books, especially Going on a Goon Hunt. We have read this book so many times. They are very similar to their source materials. Goodnight Goon has some good rhymes. It's got a lot of classic monsters who make appearances in it. And Going on a Goon Hunt has that rhythm. We're going on a goon hunt. We're gonna catch a green one. I'm not scared. So it's fun to read and interact with and have your kids keep the beat while you read. While they're going on the goon hunt, the goon is hiding in each picture until you get to the end. So my kids like to find the goon on every page. And I love that the baby in this book is never scared of anything that's happening. She's there for it. And I love that for her. Some of the words you will find in these books. In Goodnight Goon, you will find the words tomb, lagoon, claws, screechy, goo, and jaws. And then some possibly new words to your child in Going on a Goon Hunt would be twisted, stumble, murky, dingy, skulk, foggy, crumbling, crooked, and bald. So words your kids might not hear a lot on an everyday basis. A lot of really spooky words in these books. These are really fun for, especially if you like these classic books, these are really fun for Halloween season and getting in the spooky mood. At number 12, I have The Woods in the Walls, which I picked up at a library sale. This book is very creepy. It's one of the creepier books for kids I've read. My one complaint is that I do think it overstays its welcome just a little bit, especially when my daughter was very small and she would pick out 5 books to read at bedtime. We would fly through a lot of her shorter books, and then this one felt like we were reading it forever. Not as much of a problem now that a lot of the books she's reading have caught up in length, but I do feel like this one overstays its welcome just a little bit in terms of how long it is and how long it takes to read. However, it's got this weird art style that always feels a little upsetting. There's a real weird moment at the end that just kind of leaves you like, what? I thought my kids would be more scared of this, but they just seem to like it. There's a lot of humor in it, even though it is pretty creepy and weird. The conceit of this book is that the main character, Lucy, hears sounds and just knows that there are wolves in her wall. And when she confronts her family about it, they all say the same thing. When the wolves come out of the walls, it's all over. And of course, the wolves come out of the walls. So we get to see what happens with that and how Lucy and her family react to the wolves coming out of their walls and what they do about it. Some of the words you can find in this one include plotting, ignorance, brandishing, dreadful, brochures, sousaphone, astonishingly, rhubarb, banister, and scurrying. At number 11, we have Scooby-Doo and the Mystery of the Haunted Library. We have a lot of Scooby-Doo books. I love Scooby-Doo, and my kids now love Scooby-Doo too. I picked this one because it is a picture book, and it does seem to be an original story, not something that's been adapted from any source that I could tell. We have a lot of Scooby-Doo books that are exactly the art style of the show, which are great, but I like this one because it sets the kids in a younger age, more like a pup named Scooby-Doo, although not exactly that style, and it sets them in their school at a young age, which is great for kids. This one does have a cliche feud between the librarian and the gym teacher because, jocks and nerds can't get along, I guess. But other than that, I like this one. It has a very classic Scooby-Doo feel with the monster, but it's also got a lot of humor in it. One of my favorite parts is when they are talking to the principal, they're asking him questions, and he answers a bunch of them, and then he just suddenly goes, "Wait, did you bring a dog to school?" Which is just such a great moment of the fact that they take Scooby everywhere and no one mentions it. So it's just got some good humor in it. Here's a little bit of the art so you can see the kids of Mystery Inc. It's a good one. I like it quite a bit. Some of the words your kids might encounter in this book are overdue, chattering, unlikely, over budget, raspy, stakeout, sarcasm, culprit, and advantage. All right, top 10 time. Again, this is largely based on vibes, but these are the 10 books I love reading to my kids the most right now for spooky vibes that are not explicitly set at Halloween. At number 10, we have Beware, Beware the Noise Out There. This is another interactive book. There are 24 little circles throughout this book that you can touch. I have it turned off at the moment. But when you touch these things, it makes a sound. Of the different sound effects, there's a lot of breaking twigs and hooting owls and rattling chains. The whole story rhymes, so it's a fun sing-songy rhyme as you're reading it. My kids love pushing the buttons. It's spooky, these two kids are out exploring. They're trying to be brave until they get just too scared. And the one sound, I'll play for you the one sound that my kids think is creepy. The very last sound of the book. Hopefully you can hear it. Let's see. They get to the end and they're like, I don't know that I want to push the last one. I do like that it has an on and off switch in the back, as well as easy access to the battery panel. So this one will last longer than some sound books where once the batteries are dead, you can't really do much about it. This one at least gives you the option to replace it so that you can enjoy this book for a while to come. There is a great variety of spooky things in this book, from ghosts and ghouls to witches and mummies and ghosts and haunted suits of armor. There's a lot of good stuff in here to introduce your kids to various spooky things and get them in the Halloween spooky spirit. This one's a winner for sure. Some of the words your kids will encounter in this book are thunderclap, cauldron, shack, tremble, splinter, clackety-clack, and rattling. There's a lot of good sound words in this book for sure. At number 9, we have a book that's part of another series we own a lot of for my kids, and that is 10 Minutes to Bed, Little Monster. These books are very cute. There's a whole bunch of them. This is the only one I would describe as spooky themed. The stories go where there are 10 minutes to bed and you count down from 10 minutes to 1 minute, so you get that counting down repetition with your kids. The book rhymes. It's very sweet. This one follows Belch, the littlest monster, as she spends the last 10 minutes before bedtime exploring her house, being creepy, doing silly things with her friends before it's time to crawl into bed and go to sleep. And the book ends with the sweet message that monsters aren't that different than you. When it's time for bed, they're sleepy too. So monsters need sleep too. So I thought that was cute. There's also a neat element in this book. This spider is on pretty much every page, at least every 2-page spread. So my kids really like finding the spider. Like you can see him here on the title page. And then he appears throughout the book. Where is he? He's right here. He appears throughout the book in various places, so it's fun to find for kids when you're going through. You can be like, where's the spider? This one's really cute. I like it a lot. Some of the words your kids will encounter in this book are gleaming, prowl, bellow, herd, slurping, riot, and trudge. Coming in at number 8 is a book that is probably far too high on the list, but again, it is a book that means a lot to me and my family, so it's higher based purely on nostalgia, and that's Little Witch's Zoom and Broom. This is a very short, sweet little story about the night when all little witches learn to fly on their brooms, and it focuses on this little witch who maybe is too little for a broom, maybe she's too little to zoom, and as the brooms and the witches match up, she's left and looks over and sees that there's a tiny little broom that is also equally worried about being too little. It's worried it's too little to zoom, and the two of them team up and zoom off into the night sky. My daughter was absolutely itty bitty for the longest time. I was convinced she was never gonna grow. So we picked this one up back when she was a tiny pixie baby, and it has just remained a favorite in our family because of the memories we share with this book and with it zooming. It's very cute. The art is very whimsical with these little witches and their brooms. And it's just, again, it's a good book, but it's probably higher on this list solely because of the lore it holds in my family. We're never getting rid of this book. We love this book. It doesn't have a ton of words in it, but some interesting words your kids might not have encountered are etiquette, polite, and bitty, as in itty bitty. Book number 7, I told you he'd be back. It's C is for Cthulhu. This is an ABC book set in the Lovecraftian horror universe. It has some weird ones in it, but it's so weird that I just love it. There are a lot of things in this book that do not hold your hand on how to pronounce them. Some of them, if you're really familiar with Lovecraft, you might know, like Yog-Sothoth, Cthulhu, Relay. However, there were some in here that, because I am familiar with Lovecraft but not deeply entrenched, there were some in here that I looked at and didn't know how to say, like this one. X is for Zern? Zern? I don't know. My best advice, if you don't know how to pronounce some of these words, pronounce it with confidence. Your kids aren't going to know the difference. Just do the best you can. Look it up later if you really want, but just pronounce it with confidence. But I really like this book. It's funny. It's got spooky stuff in it, but spooky in a way that is safe Because it is an ABC book, your kids are following a very familiar framework. While these pictures are kind of creepy, they're not going to jump out and scare them. It's just an ABC book. It's also really cute to hear your kids say things like, the Book of the Dead. There's difficult Cthulhu monsters in here, and then some things are easier, like ghouls and zombies and fear. Or so much worse than zombies. If you are a fan of Eldritch Horror, this book is a must-have. Some of the fun words in here your kids will encounter are ancient, ghouls, cultist, tiara, voyage, and rodent. Number 6 is Penguin. Penguins have been my favorite animal since I was 3 years old. So when I saw this one in the bookstore, I could not pick it up. It's super cute. This is the story of a Dracula family that goes to the zoo, and while they're visiting the penguin house, the baby switches place with a penguin, and he has an adventure in the penguin house while the penguin gets to go around with the family to visit the rest of the zoo. The art's really cute. You can see here Dracula baby meeting the penguin, how he sort of blends in there with the other penguins. There isn't really a lot to say about it. I just really like it, but I think it's a good time if you like spooky things and penguins. It's a good time. Some of the words your kids will encounter in this book are crowds, turnstiles, enclosure, majestic, aviary, demonstration, observe, exhibit, and souvenir. Number 5 is the Tokyo Light Parade. This book is about Japanese demons and which are called yokai, which are all sorts of spirits and ghosts and things. This story is a take off of the Light Parade of 100 demons that is said to walk through the streets. It's a very popular image in folklore, and this is kind of a children's book take on it. We follow Eka, a little girl in a kitsune costume, who is visiting Japan after having moved to the US. She has returned and is reunited with her yokai friends for one night, and she doesn't know when she's going to be back. She doesn't know if this is her last light parade. So it's a story about these amazing creatures, but it's also a story about moving and having to leave the places and the people you love behind. Eka's grandfather still lives in Japan, and you get the sense that when she's telling her yokai friends, I don't know when I'll be back, she's definitely thinking of her grandfather as well. When will she get to see him again? They have a conversation and she says, maybe I'll be back next summer. Maybe in 10 years. Maybe never. And that's a really bittersweet thought about moving and leaving people behind. And that fear when you leave somewhere of, are you going to be able to see them again? Will they still be there if you're able to go back? So I think this book would resonate with a lot of kids who've had to experience moving, as well as just missing that stuff you've left behind, even when you like your new home. I lived in Japan for 3 years, so I love anything that has to do with Japan, and I especially love Japanese yokai. So this was a definite pickup for me as soon as I saw it. I love this book. The art is very evocative of this sense of being in an otherworldly place. There's great pictures of these yokai. Overall, this one's a winner for me. Not spooky, but a great look at some different monsters that maybe a lot of kids aren't familiar with. Some words you will find in this book are mumbling, shoji, webbed, enormous, swooping, bodega, peering, and whoop. Number 4 is monster trucks. My son is obsessed with cars and things that go. I have probably read this book 50 times. Probably more than that. We've read this book a lot. And it's not a very big book. It's a board book. But I've read this book so many times, y'all. But it's so cute and I love it. What starts out as being kind of a play on monster trucks and like making them monsters, it does introduce some monster trucks. But then we have a race. And in the race, we have the monster trucks versus a little blue bus, who at first glance does not seem to be very otherworldly or special. And we see how the race goes between them. My son's favorite page is this one, where he likes to yell the word crash. Overall, it's a fun little rhyming book. There are a couple places where the rhythm of the rhyme gets a little off, but overall it's a very satisfying read. These monster cars are very well done, and it's fun to see them being creepy and spooky in car form. It's a lot different than the other books we have, and I like it a lot. There's lots of really good sound words in this, like howl, moan, groan, grumble, and also a lot of good car words. Like they talk about the jump of cables, they talk about diesel and axles, so lots of good words in this one too. Number 3 is Nobody Likes a Goblin. This is another one that isn't spooky or scary at all, but does feature a monster type of spooky character in a different sense. So Nobody Likes a Goblin follows Goblin. Goblin lives in a dungeon, and one day the adventurers come and take everything, including his best friend Skeleton. So Goblin has to go on his way on an adventure to try to get his friend back. The conceit of the story, like Nobody Likes a Goblin, this goes into the idea of preconceived notions and that the goblin should be the bad guy. But really here, the goblin is the good guy. He's just trying to get his friend back from the people who stole him. So while there's lots of people going after him just because he's a goblin, Goblin does manage to find people who accept and love him for the goblin that he is, which I just think is a beautiful story. So it's a lovely little story about friendship. I really like Ben Hatkey's work. We have a lot of his books, but this is probably our favorite. While it's a story about a goblin on an adventure to find his friend, it's also a story about being yourself and finding the people who love and accept you for who you are, because they're out there. And it's kind of subtle, but in a really beautiful way. I really like this one. Some fun words that kids will encounter in this book are dungeon, torches, nod, plundered, filthy, and doom. Now these top 2 flip-flopped a bunch of times for me. I love both of these books immensely, and if I made this list tomorrow, they might flip-flop. A lot of these top 5 might flip-flop, honestly, but these 2 are 2 that I really love, so either one's a winner. Number 2 is Room on the Broom. This one is pretty well known. This is by the author of The Gruffalo. And it is just a wonderful little sing-songy rhyming story about a witch on her broom as she flies around, loses things, and meets a variety of animals. The first several sections are fairly repetitive, so they're very recognizable to children. They can anticipate what's going to happen next, and that's exciting. It is very song-like. They feel like verses that build on each other. It's just a wonderful little read aloud. It's a lot of fun. I feel like this one's pretty well known, so it doesn't need me to sell it as much as some of the others. But if you haven't picked this one up, I like it even better than The Gruffalo. I love this book. It's wonderful. Some great words in this book are ginger, wailed, clambered, clutched, moors, ditch, yowl, and squelched. A lot of good sound effect words in all these books. And finally, my favorite spooky themed non-Halloween book is Schnitzel, a cautionary tale for lazy louts. Now, part of the reason this is my number 1 is because I feel it is lesser known. I had never heard of this book before I found it in a library sale and picked it up. This book is a take on the Sorcerer's Apprentice tale. We have the apprentice here, and he serves Sir Willibald. This story also is a cautionary tale. It has a clear lesson. This boy does not like doing his chores. He is given an offer that is too good to be true by a door-to-door salesman who offers to do all the work for him without charging him anything. So he invites this stranger in who turns out to be a vampire with a vacuum that eats the entire house. So the book has a clear lesson that doing your work without shortcuts is the best way to do it, and that if an offer seems too good to be true, it probably is. The vampire in this is pretty spooky. He is definitely a threat in the story, and it's only due to outside influences of Sir Willibald that our protagonist ends up being okay. The entire art style of this book is kind of sepia tone. Very limited use of color. So it's very striking. It's great. I really enjoy this one. It's hard to explain how much I like it without just reading it to you. One of the reasons I love this book so much is the vocabulary that's in this book. Let me read you a few of the words I wrote down that are in this book that I think really sum up the level of vocabulary you get with this one. Apprentice, enthralled, lout, temperamental, opera cloak, oozed, flourish, chandelier, consuming, digesting, ghastly, and nevermore. A lot of these words are a lot more uncommon, which really makes this book, it's poetry. It's written as a long poem. I really enjoy reading this one with my kids. It's one I choose frequently to read with them. It's just a great little spooky book. I like this one a lot. I would recommend this one wholeheartedly. Hopefully it's still in print and people can find it. I didn't even check. But yeah, hadn't heard of this one before and feel like more people should be picking this one up. Really enjoyed it. So that was 20, technically 21 Spooky Kids books that you and your kids might enjoy together. Again, these are books that are not explicitly set at Halloween. I will have a video on Halloween kids books coming up soon or posted shortly before this one. Not exactly sure what's going up first. We'll see. Expect it soon or already, one of the two. But these are books that are great to read in the fall, or if your kids just love spookiness and want to take it all year round. These are books that are not explicitly set at Halloween, but continue that spooky theme maybe for the rest of the year. So like the video if you did, subscribe to tell YouTube you want to see more of me for some reason. Leave a comment down below if you enjoyed any of these books. Had you heard of any of these? I know a lot of these feel like pretty obscure picks, and there are so many children's books out there. I'd love to know if you'd heard of any of these or if they were all brand new to you. It feels like there is such a glut of children's literature. It can be hard to pick through and know what's really good, so I'd love to hear from you down below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Bye! October brings the allergies.